All right. Hello, ABL and fans of the ABL. I am back, Alan of the Rockies. I have with me the new owner of the ABL Orioles, Steve. Steven. It's Steven on the Discord. It's Steve here. Do you have a
Steve is
preference?
fine. Steve is fine.
Okay, so Orioles Steve, I'll go with. Steve, you got to be excited, right? Like let's get the obvious out of the way. Like we have baseball. It's
Yeah,
slightly delayed. Are you pretty hyped?
I'm very excited. I've got my Cardinal gear ready. I'll have to bust out some Oriole gear too. I think like everybody else, I'm excited for baseball to be back. I'd much rather be reading about spring training battles than lockouts and
Right.
CBTs
Yeah.
and whatever, right? And
So you
hopefully,
so you
go
are a
ahead.
Cardinal fan. You are
I
a
am
Cardinal
a
fan.
big Cardinals
Are
fan.
you a Midwest guy like originally?
No, I'm actually from Boston originally. But when I was about 7 years old, I went into a local barber shop, and my barber was a big time Red Sox fan. And he only had one photograph in the entire barber shop, and it was a photograph of Bob Gibson pitching in the 67 World Series against the Red Sox. And I said to him, I said, why do you have this picture, a picture of a Cardinal beating the Red Sox in 67? And he just said, respect. And after that, I was sold on the Cardinals. And I've
Doesn't
been
take much
following
more
them
than
ever
that,
since.
right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Bob Gibson immediately became my favorite player,
So that kind
even
of
though at that point he was retired.
that
What's that?
started your Cardinal fandom, and I think anybody that's on the Discord, we've seen some like pieces of your collection. It clearly has carried on
Oh, yeah,
into your adulthood and everything. So you are a Cardinal guy.
I am. And in fact, I have Bob Gibson tattooed on my right shoulder. So,
Wow.
um,
Wow. Okay. Very cool. That is serious. That is serious Cardinal fan. Yeah. Now I have to assume have you been to Bush?
I have. So I've been out there twice. I was there in 2007, and then actually the last baseball game I attended live was in 2019 at the end of the season, the series against the Cubs. So I went down to St. Louis with a buddy of mine who's a big Cubs fan, and we, basically went to the Village Ballpark one night, and the next day we went to the
Yeah.
game. It was a lot of fun. Um,
Cardinal Cub games are. I mean, I've never been to a Red Sox Yankees but man, Cardinal Cubs. That's
oh,
about
it's
as good
great.
as it gets if you really love some good old fashioned baseball rivalry.
Yeah.
Even if both of the teams suck, like plenty of times in the '90s they both suck. They were both sucking
Oh,
in
yeah.
a lot of the '90s, especially. But still fun to even just to watch the games on the TV with a Cub fan. If you're a Cardinal fan, where that's
Yeah, there actually been
I,
very few times when both teams have been good. All right,
yeah.
it's very uneven. So, for example, even in the '90s, like the mid '90s, the Cardinals had a pretty decent team, and
Yeah.
then that's when Tony La Russa first took over, and then the Cubs were good, and then the Cubs were bad, and then the
Yeah.
Cardinals got
Man,
good.
96. Now you remind me, 96. What a heartbreaker 96 was to get whomped by the Braves like that. After, as a kid, I was 11. It was really my first real taste of playoff baseball, where I was around I was 3 years old in '88 and stuff. Like I didn't,
Yep,
my dad's telling me what's going on, but I don't know what the hell's going on. But
sure.
'96. I understood and I was a huge fan. And man, to get swept by the Braves, that was just soul crushing. And then that kind of started a slide of being, not really bad for a long time, but pretty bad during the McGuire years and stuff. Like you had
Sure.
McGuire going, but the team wasn't very good. And then we get into the 2000s, and we know how the 2000s have been for
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Cardinal fans
Albert
by and
changed
large.
everything,
But
right? Yeah.
so so you've been to Bush. Did 2007 was that the first year of the new Bush?
That was the second year of the new
Second year of
Bush.
the
The
new Bush.
Cardinals actually won the World Series in their first year in the stadium in '06,
Yes, yes.
right?
Okay, 2006.
Um,
So you had not been to Old Bush.
no, no, no.
Yeah, yeah. I've been to new one. I don't know the old one. I kind of like. I have a spot in my heart for the circular, the cookie cutter kind of dome, kind of like Bush was, but it had all the little arches and everything. Like
Yeah.
it was a nice ballpark, but I do like the new one. I do
Oh, the
like
new
the new one
stadium's
better.
great. It's one of
Yeah,
my
you
favorite.
can't really compare. Like it's nostalgia wise, okay, the old one was fun and everything. And I was there in, I think it was maybe 1990 or 91 for my first game when it was still turf. and I got to go on the field. I don't remember a whole lot about it. I got my picture taken with Vince Coleman
Oh, that's cool.
and a couple other guys, but Vince Coleman was the one that stood out. And the turf. I remember the turf, but not. I don't remember the stadium or anything. But how many other before we get deep into like the ABL and the Orioles?
Yeah.
How many other ballparks have you been to? Like major league ballparks?
Yeah, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I've been to a fair number of them. I've been to the World Series in San Francisco. Saw them play the Royals out there
nice.
In 2014, which was a lot of fun. So I got to see, "Don't Stop Believing," sung live at the stadium, which is pretty cool. I've been obviously to Fenway many times, and I have been to Red Sox Yankees games, and they can be ferocious. I've seen many beatings in the stands.
It comes with the territory.
And I've been to Citi Field. I live in New York, so I've been to Citi Field and Yankee Stadium, both the old stadiums, Shea, and I've been to a bunch of ball games here in New York. Camden's a great stadium. Been there.
That's high on my list of want to. Yeah, I want to.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Did you hate Shea? Does Shea suck as bad as everybody says it does?
Shea was terrible. I mean, it was an ugly stadium.
Planes flying over every 10 minutes.
Well, they still have that at Citi Field. Citi Field's beautiful.
Yeah, I guess they do, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem to be as big of an issue for people these days. I don't know why that is, but I remember specifically Ron Santo. Ron Santo hated Shea Stadium. Yeah. He hated it.
It's part of being a Mets fan. I think it's like having the interruption. Like there's nothing that's smooth for the Mets, right? Everything's like a problem.
Even after the new stadium and the new kid, the pitcher, we got Syndergaard, we got DeGrom. Nothing. They can't have nice things. They just, even with the richest owner in sport, they can't have nice things. It just it seems like it's never going to work out for the Mets. I'm okay with that. It
only works out once every 25 years.
I'm fine with. I love the Mets uniforms. That's the thing I love with the Mets.
You got your Mets pitching ninja hat on.
Yeah. I love the Mets colors, and I love the story of their uniform. I think it's maybe, if not the best, one of the best in baseball. I really like the Mets uniforms. But aside from that, I mean the Dwight Gooden was cool and everything, but my dad kind of taught me growing up that we hate the Mets. I didn't really know why, but we as Cardinal fans, I don't know, we hated the Mets for some reason.
It was a fierce rivalry for a while because obviously they're both in the same division in the 80s, and
that had to be more what it was before I knew what was going on. His 20s and everything, he was hating the Mets. So I grew up kind of supposed to hate the Mets. I was ashamed to admit that I liked the jerseys for the longest time, but I finally told them, I actually really love.
Well, you know the story about why the jerseys came about, right? The colors and the scheme.
Yeah, like the history of the it's like Brooklyn and the Giants and it's like a history of New York baseball crunched into a uniform. It's a really, really cool aspect of a uniform. Maybe there's some others like that, but you're not going to get a story like that with the D-backs, it's just not going to happen. Maybe they can have cool colors, or the snake looked neat one year, but
the stadium is really cool is Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia, which is a nice thing to trip into.
I would like to make an East Coast. My dad and I in 2019, we did kind of a Midwest Rust Belt, like Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Detroit. We did all of those. Yeah, I've been to Wrigley. It's been a long time. I haven't been to like New Wrigley. Mm-hmm. I was there when it was still falling apart. There's pieces of concrete, falling from above you. And I had really bad. I was under an overhang, the next level. So any fly ball or foul ball that went up, you had no idea where it was going until it finally came down.
Yep.
And Michael Tucker hit a walk-off home run. It was against the Cardinals in Wrigley. Michael Tucker hit a walk-off home run to win it that, I didn't know landed until the crowd started freaking out.
Right.
You don't know where the ball is. And that kind of fostered my hate for Wrigley. that one bad experience.
Yeah, it's really the ivy walls, and that's basically it, right? It's
the history. The history. A lot of stuff has happened there and everything. It's cool, but I did not have an enjoyable experience.
No.
Chris Carpenter I think it was Chris Carpenter pitching. He got hit in the face with a line drive.
Oh,
but stayed in the game, kept pitching.
Of course he did.
Really
of course
cool.
he did.
Yeah, of course he did, right? The guy who says that if he wasn't a baseball player, he wants to be a hockey goon. And this was
Yeah,
a long time ago, but yeah, some stupid interview. He's like, I think I'd like to be a hockey goon if I wasn't playing baseball. Yeah. So
I have no doubt he would have been successful at it.
he's a big guy, man. He's like 6'6", yeah, 230, 240. He's a big dude.
Yep.
Let's get into some ABL. So
Sure.
you are, of course, the new. I mean, you've been around for a minute now, but you are the new Orioles owner. You took over for Randy, who didn't leave you with a great team to take over. Now, you are a fantasy guy. Like you are not new to fantasy. You've talked about some of the other leagues you've played in and such. So taking over taking over a non-playoff team, I don't want to speak for it. Was it kind of like part of the fun for you, like part of the challenge to come in and take a team that maybe you were going to be able to rise from the depths a little bit?
Well, I mean, look, it's whenever you enter a league that's already in existence, it's very rare that you're taking over a good team, right?
Right.
It's just the nature of it. Somebody got sick of managing this thing and they want to hand it off, right?
Yeah.
And as often is the case, and we've seen it, in other instances in ABL, and I've seen it in other leagues. Somebody's like asleep at the switch, right? So there's a lot of neglect, and there are a lot of weeds you get on the roster, and you got to like pull them out and discard and revamp. So, and I think when I took over the team in August, the roster was technically still in the playoff hunt, would have been in the second division.
Yeah, mathematically.
Yeah. And I just, I just decided I was going to blow it up. Right. And I didn't like, there was an imbalance of prospects towards pitching. And so I wanted to improve the hitting prospects. And taking a look around the league, whenever you got to get a lay of the land, right? And I just looked at the other rosters and the contracts, and I said, well, the strategy for me anyway is going to be to try to get cheap contracts and shed as much money as possible, and with the goal of competing in 2023. That was my goal. And if I can, put together a roster in 2022 that can compete and be, at least decent, great. And so, when I looked at all the market prices from the original auction, I was just kind of shocked by how high the prices were. And I was like, all right, you got to go really cheap, right? So we're going to do whatever we can to trade this high value talent. Like, Corey Seager, I traded, and I just wanted to dump all those guys.
You came in and really started making some moves like immediately. And I've mentioned it on other pods, like these guys, you and Zach and Josh, like you guys came in and really, didn't sit on it and say, well, let's see what I got here. It seemed like you guys all had a pretty good idea of what you had and maybe what you wanted to start doing with it. You came in and immediately started making some moves, which, is a great sign when the new owner wants to come in and get active. In a 30-team league, this is my only one. I don't know how easy it is to come in and be a newer guy, not have any previous relationship with anybody and start making moves. But it seemed like you fell right into it pretty easy.
Yeah, and it is a challenge. The 30-team league is the challenge, I think. And not only is it a challenge just because of the size and the lack of depth, right, available in the free agent pool, but on the rosters themselves. I mean, when you look at these rosters, right, you say like, oh, well, this part of the team looks good, and then this other part looks really bad, right? But then you realize it's every team in the league.
Yeah, everybody's like that. Yeah.
Everybody's got these warts, right? So, yeah, it's a challenge, but I think the other challenge here is that there are so many very active owners and shrewd owners. There's a lot of depth and skill here, which is probably unusual because when you have that many owners, it's really hard to find that many good people in fantasy baseball. There are a lot of people who just kind of go through the motions, and you see that a lot in like even 16 or 20 team leagues, in my experience.
There's almost always a couple. You can just write them off 2 months into the season. Yeah,
right.
It's inevitable.
And this league is just not like that. I mean, we're probably 25, 27 teams deep in terms of real activity. And obviously you have a couple guys who, for a variety of reasons, have not been active. And, I've been impressed, by just the level of commitment. And even if I don't necessarily agree with some of the moves people make, like it's good to see them making the moves, and I'm like,
guys, we're not all gonna, if we all agreed with each other, like no moves would get made. If we all thought, what we all equally thought what we thought about these guys, like we wouldn't see 200 plus trades before the season starts. Like,
right.
I still, it's hard to, I was here all of year one. It's still hard to wrap my head around the amount of just the sheer amount of movement of players. And I thought with contracts being introduced that it might slow down. It really hasn't. Like guys seem okay with taking on length now, and instead of
Yeah.
just looking at dollars for the year, they're okay with length now. So
Yep.
it didn't slow it down as much as I thought I would.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how the dynamic shifts when some of these minor leaguers start coming up. And
I think especially the more expensive, ones. I wonder what's going to happen when these guys come up. If they're not, if Julio Rodriguez comes up and he's not an immediate stud.
yeah, like he's Jared Kelenic, right? Maybe he plays
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. I mean, I guess if the way ABL is, I guess it is kind of worked out to where you don't have to make that decision right away in that first year. So you have a
No.
year and a half or whatever it might be, but it's still he ends up being $32 next year of you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah. The guy
Those
who really
expensive
fascinates
prospects are
me
tough.
is Mackenzie Gore, who I think has
Yeah,
a $29 contract in this league.
29.
So,
Yeah,
there's a guy who has the ability to be a frontline starting pitcher, right? But obviously has struggled mightily in the last 2 years, right? And with his command. And so it's really going to be interesting to me when he gets called up, and I think he gets called up this year, right? Like what happens
yeah.
because he's on the
What is
40-man
going to be the
roster,
deal?
right? And so if he like takes off and puts it together, which he can do, I mean, he's very skilled. That's not a bad contract in this league,
No, yeah. If he looks like he's going to stick at starter and comes up and
Yeah,
I wouldn't know what I would want to do. I really don't.
right,
I'm glad I don't have to make that decision. So,
right,
and I had him on the team at one point, but it was that same kind of thing. And this was very early last year where I was thinking, hey man, if he gets called up this year and has a great start, I don't want to be saddled with the decision of, well, now I don't want to deal him because look how good he might be, but
right.
then if he also completely flames out, I'm just sitting here, with an albatross around, not an albatross, but an expensive contract
Yeah,
that now looks like it sucks, instead of looking like a good value.
yeah,
That was the initial auction. I wish, you've heard us talk about it, but it was bizarre. You saw some of the prospects on the Orioles and stuff. It was bizarre.
yeah,
Some of these guys went really, really prospect heavy and spent the money on prospects. And then, of course, in this last auction that you did participate in, those prospects weren't out there getting
yep.
money poured into them. So with that auction, did you come out of this second auction? I guess asking if you're happy with it, that's kind of vague, but like, did you? I really like the top 3 or 4 guys you took away. You ended up with $47 Trey Turner, $31 Bellinger, which I'm still a Bellinger guy. I don't think that he forgot how to hit a baseball.
Right.
We've seen how good he can be. I don't think it just left him. Mountcastle for 30 coming home to Baltimore, and I would say Alec Boehm is probably my other guy that I was in on Boehm. I had a giant hole at third base. I like the underlying metrics with him. If he could just get the ball in the air a little bit more. But
Look,
I quite like the 4 guys you nabbed there. Did you get out of the auction happy? Did you?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
look,
yeah.
my strategy going into the auction, I obviously had a lot of money to spend, and my strategy, given the lack of pitching, was to go really heavy on hitting, and so I allocated 66% of my budget to hitting, and if you look at the numbers now, I think I actually hit that. I think it's about a little over 66% when you look at the division, and what I wanted to do was fix the offense this year and have some capable contracts moving forward. And my key target was Cody Bellinger at 31 because I thought he'd be cheap. I had a $35 max bid on him.
I thought he'd be cheaper too. Honestly, I was surprised to see him get up there as much as he was. But I think it's still a decent.
Yeah, look, he's 26 years old, and he's a former MVP.
Yeah,
and if he comes back, right, that's a great contract to have him on. And if he doesn't, I just cut him. And I have a slew of center fielders coming up from the minors I've got, Josh Lowe, and I've got, Valera. I've got other guys coming up. I've got,
Oh
Ramos,
yeah, Valera. Ooh.
right? So I've got all these guys who can play multiple positions, and who are, going to be up either this year or next year. So it's kind of like a riskless transaction for me with Cody. And I just figured you're not going to get an opportunity to buy low on him again if he comes back.
Yeah, exactly. And what you like you said, you had the money. I mean, if the pitching's not there, Bellinger could be. I mean, just from the eye, he could be a top 5 bat, and we've seen him do it. We've seen him be a top 5, top 10 bat
Oh
in
yeah,
baseball. But just in this, especially in this auction, he could
yeah,
end
yeah.
up being
I thought it was
a
tremendous value. It was similar to Yelich going for 26. Which is
yeah,
another guy I had on my radar screen. Yelich is. Both guys have injury problems. Yelich's back problems trouble me because those are really
yeah.
chronic problems. So I do worry about him, but I thought that was a nice contract too at $26. And, Alec Boehm's a guy that I was really high on coming out of the minors. And I've been disappointed with, his launch angle and his ground ball tendencies. And he really hasn't barreled balls enough. But he did very well in the minors, in the upper minors, and obviously had a great rookie season. A little overinflated with his batting average, but there's hope there. I mean, I frankly, the one player that I wanted to get in the draft that I didn't get was Kibron Hayes, and that's who I was targeting at third base. And I ended up with Bohm as a fallback. But I really wanted Trey Turner. I had a $52 max bid on him, and love the steals and what he provides and the dual eligibility. And he's a very tradable contract, I think, at $47 if I want to do that.
When you got a guy that's going to average 4+ points a game, which is upper tier for your bats. Trax has him projected 600+ point player, which again is upper tier for any bats. I had him. I don't remember exactly what I said, but we did the prediction pod. I'm pretty sure I had him going for higher than $50. So I felt like that was a great, especially with the second and short eligibility.
Yep.
It kind of adds another little wrinkle to his value. 47. I really liked that relative to what we had seen. The Trouts and the Sotos and the Tatises go for previously. I thought that was going to be a great value.
Yeah, he was the number two guy on my board, and so I was like really really pleased to get him at that price. Mountcastle was the guy you mentioned who I think is just a solid bat, and I think it's pretty clear that around $30 is around his market value now after 2 drafts.
Yeah, it looks like it.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if I end up trading him this year at some point, but it's fine. It gives you some backup at first base when Miguel Sano invariably goes on the IL, which he certainly will do at some point.
He will, he'll pull some fat, he'll pull some fat and go on the IL.
Or just can't hit the side of a barn for like a 2-week stretch, and I had to put him on the bench.
But then he'll get a hold of it, and it'll go 600 feet.
He's a guy. I think it's nice to have in a daily league because you can actually bench him, right?
Because
when he's hot, he's great. But
the decision to play him on a Sunday night or a Monday morning in a weekly league is really looking at him and then kind of looking at who else you have, and maybe checking the wire one last time and seeing if there's maybe because he's going up against some good arms or whatever. But I like Sano. I'm waiting for him to have that year. Kind of like I feel like I've been waiting for Joey Gallo to have the same kind of year, and
they're very similar players.
And they just kind of don't. Maybe they are what they are, and I need to lower my expectations.
50. I mean, that could happen.
That's kind of I guess that's kind of what I mean. I'm waiting for that big to eclipse some big mark in home runs, because what else are you really going to be looking for? But I don't know. I was looking for Joey Gallo to be better than he was after he was traded to the Yankees last year. I'd like him to be more like a 3.3, 3.4 point per game player in the ABL.
Yeah, I think Gallo's an interesting guy now with the shift being banned, right? And how is that going to impact his value going forward? And
he seems to think it's going to help him. But
I mean, he's a guy who even admitted himself, I think last year, that he was trying too hard to take advantage of the short porch and left. Excuse me, in
Yeah.
right in Yankee Stadium for left-handed hitters. Um, so if he just goes out there and plays like Joey Gallo, I think he'll
Yeah,
be a
just
lot.
swing, man. Just
Yeah,
swing. You don't have to try to kill it, just
yeah,
and he's like a New York. He's from New York, I think. So it was maybe another thing of like, oh, I'm a Yankee. Let's give
right.
him. I'm not giving up on him yet. I did kind of kick him around with a team or two in trade talks, but not because I don't like him, but I would like him to be better than,
Yeah, yeah, I know.
than he showed with the Yankees. I mean, he hit I think pretty well under 200 after he got traded, which you're not expecting batting average from Joey Gallo, but you're not expecting a buck 79 either. So
No, no,
hit
no,
hit
no.
your weight, Joey. Please hit your weight at least.
Yeah, I have a couple
um,
shares of Gallo and was equally disappointed with his post trade, particularly because I passed up opportunities to trade him after the trade deadline.
well, I don't hate him in point. He a lot of like Sano. These single, maybe you call them, they're not single category guys, but you Joey Gallo, and you can like him in points too because he walks a ton. He's not
Sure.
like he's not a guy that hits a ton of doubles or anything, but he does walk a lot, and home runs are still points. But man, he's just an average killer in roto,
Oh
and
yeah,
batting average, at least to me, is one of those. It just feels like whenever I fall behind in batting average, I can never get out of that hole.
nope,
And
nope,
you don't want to get stuck having to draft like the Luis Arias, the guy on the Twins that he's
sure.
pretty much just average. He doesn't even steal bases, and he's terrible defensively. You don't
Yeah,
want to
no,
have to do
yeah, it's
that.
the
You don't have to
Michael.
waste two roster spots.
Right, it's the Michael
Yeah.
Brantley strategy, right? With the batting average leagues, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you pair him with Joey Gallo and basically hit 250? You
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
net it out, right?
Man, Brantley was so what another frustrating guy, like because how good he is, but man, for a while there, he was always hurt. Going back to like the Indians, he was always hurt.
Sure.
But when he was healthy, he always showed how good he was. I was such a big Michael Brantley fan, especially in points leagues. And he
Yeah,
was a
no, he's a great
doubles
hitter.
machine, Yeah, he's just a great hitter. But man, he can never stay healthy. And then all of a sudden, it seemed like he was like 34. I don't even
Yeah.
know if he's 34 yet, but it just kind of felt like he turned mid 30s overnight when all those injuries stacked up.
Yep. No, he
Uh,
missed a lot of time in the
yeah,
good old fast, right?
yeah.
Brantley actually reminds me of a lot of the hitters from the '80s, right? He's just like it was like that kind of Keith Hernandez mold, where
Just
you hit
well-rounded,
300,
yeah.
you have about 15, 17 home runs,
Yeah.
he's that kind of ball player.
He's a Nick Markakis was always my guy. Like that is the
Sure.
Hall of very good. Goes and
Yep.
gets it done every single day. Is always playing well. Okay, Brantley's not always playing 160 games. Markakis was there for a while, but
Sure.
just 290, maybe sneaks up to 300, 15, 20 homers, might chip in some steals, but just never gets talked about as a household, kind of guy. But man, if you pay attention to baseball, if you're a fantasy player, these guys are very valuable.
Yep.
And yeah, Sano and Gallo, they have not been that. They are very,
No.
very one-dimensional for the most part. That's a bit of a sidetrack there. Sorry.
That's all right.
Let's look at some of the pitching. Let's look at some of the pitching you ended up grabbing in
Sure.
the auction. And you had said already that you knew straight away you were not going to be going heavily after pitching in the auction. It wasn't there to be had for one. And with the money you had, you wanted to allocate it in shoring up the
Yep.
bats. But of course, you have to fill out pitching somehow. So you do spend a few bucks on a $14 Chris Paddock, which man, Paddock is tough. Like there's been, of course, times we're talking about a couple years ago now where he looked
Yeah.
like it was going to be really something, but he just like the pitches haven't come along developmental wise. Like guys have kind of caught up to he's got a hard fastball.
Yeah.
But
Well, I call my
for
pitching
14,
staff. My pitching staff, I think about it as like maybe. Right. It's like Paddock's kind of in that camp, right? You're like
Bailey Ober, you didn't get him in the auction, but Bailey Ober is getting a lot of, I don't know if you want to call it hype, but
there's a lot of sleeper hype. Of course,
there's a sect of analysis guys on Twitter that really like Bailey Ober. So he's been getting a little bit of helium. He's not like
Sure.
falling into the first 10 rounds or anything, but and
Yep.
more so the price for him in this league, that $3 price is even if he's not great,
Oh
he's
yeah.
$3 and he's going to have a spot. So
No, I'm real
I
happy
quite I
with Joe
quite like
Ryan
that.
and Bailey Ober. I mean, I have Ober in every league I'm in.
So
And
you're one of the Bailey Ober guys, clearly.
yeah, I mean, look, and I don't want to overstate his value. I think he's like a 4 and maybe a 3, and sometimes he'll be a 5, but he's there and he's going to show up and pitch, and I think he's got decent control. We'll see if he can keep the ball in the ballpark. He does have a fly ball issue this year, but I think he's undervalued overall. And as you said, for $3 in this league, I mean,
Well, for $3, Trax is predicting for 30 stars. I don't know how many pitchers Trax slates to have 30 starts, but for Bailey Ober, they are predicting 30 starts. So
yeah,
for
I mean,
$3, yeah, you're getting into like the Dodger Joe. He loves those.
right.
He's a stats guy. He's a numbers guy. Yeah, and he loves the value of, especially if he comes close to the 14 points per game that Trax is
Yeah.
even if
Like I
that
said,
drops down
well,
to
maybe
12, 11 and a half. Yeah, for $3.
yeah,
Yeah, forget about it.
yeah.
But that's
And,
not even that's not even a guy you got in the auction. But yeah, the pitching in general, Mitch Keller, we've probably all seen, especially during the lockout, the clips of him throwing and actually looking really, really good. Like if he could just
those clips
throw like that
cost
all
me
the
$12
time.
to get him. You know how pissed off I was? I was like, are you kidding me? It's Mitch Keller.
Mitch Keller's got a history in this league already. He was involved in a pizza bet in year one. It was the what the hell was it? It was the Mitch Keller versus Zach Gallen. Man, what was it? Was like walk rate or something, and Gallen maybe barely beat him. Minimum of 100 innings each, walk per night or walk rate. I don't remember what it was. Me and Tony, but Mitch Keller has had his name kicked around, not always for the best of reasons.
Right.
And you think, everybody's like, oh God, I'm having to start Mitch Keller this Sunday. That's how bad it's gotten.
Right.
But then we get lockout and everything, and the auction's coming up, and then we see this video of Mitch Keller not throwing a bullpen, not throwing with the team, but he's in, he's training somewhere. But
Yeah.
man, he looks really good. He's hitting 101, and then the balls have movement. It seems like they're doing what he wants them to do. Now, there's a long way from saying that he's going to carry that over and be able to do it against hitters and do it consistently. But
Yeah.
if I mean, it's hard not to throw $12 on a starting pitcher that's throwing 101 and combining the secondary stuff that Mitch Keller has. I'm not trying to hype him up, but man.
Yeah. Look, also in this league, I mean, like, what else was there, right, for me to bid on?
Yeah, that's a fair
right?
point. Yeah, it's not like Mitch Keller was the second guy off the board or anything. It's
Yeah. I mean, look, my strategy on pitching was to try to get young starters who are post-hype prospects, and maybe you get lucky on one or two of them. And right, so if you look at the rotation that I have, putting aside Ryan and Ober, who I had going into the draft,
sure.
Sixto Sanchez, Mitch Keller, and Chris Paddock are my basic guys, and they all fit that criteria, right?
Brady Singer, don't forget Brady Singer.
Yeah, and Singer too, right?
Yeah, there you go.
And so all those guys fall into that camp, and if I can end up keeping one or two of them, great. And if I have to throw them back into the pool, they'll be there next year to draft too.
It's not going to kill you. Yeah, it's not going to kill you.
Yeah. So I refuse to spend like big money on pitching. Like I won't do it. And you'll probably never see me spend $40 on a pitcher.
And that's due to the volatility and.
Yeah, I just I in my experience, it puts a lot of eggs in the basket with a pitcher, and they get hurt so easily that you're better off spreading the wealth a little bit on pitching. And so that's the strategy I normally employ in all my leagues that are auction leagues. And I know other people have different philosophies, and that's fine. Obviously Tony spent, I think, $40 on 3 different pitchers, right? So I mean, it's a very different view.
He put a lot of eggs in that pitching basket. Yeah.
So that's not my style, and it's not something I'm going to do. And so you'll probably see next year I'll balance out the spending a little bit, but I'm also counting on some guys coming up, from the minors and hopefully contributing too on the pitching side. So most of my pitchers are like a year or two away. And, Hunter Brown should be up this year. And I've got a bunch of guys who are 22 or 23 years old who I'm counting on, being up soon. And obviously there's volatility there because you don't know how well they're going to do out of the gate.
Yeah.
But I mean, the goal is to get my pitching as cheap as possible and then leverage the contracts and, never have to spend on pitching.
Right. Now that you bring it up, you and Tony really did go like polar opposite. You spent the money on the bigger bats. Because you guys both had a ton of money coming in. Yep. Now, granted, Tony was fully responsible for the position that his team was in. Like, you weren't. It's hard to come in and take over a team and within the next start of the next season to have that team really feel like it's where you want it to be. It's just, and especially in a 30-team league, you're not gonna, in a 12-teamer or whatever, you can come in and pick up a dozen guys off waivers that you probably like out there. Coming into a league like this, it wasn't an option for you really. So when you say like, okay, my main idea is to really get ready to compete in 23, that might sound to the layman, to the non-dynasty league player, to the non-30, that might seem like, damn, man, you're already – it's not to say that the Orioles are punting 22 because I don't know how much you agree or disagree or if you watched the over-unders that Tony I did. I put the Orioles at – I believe it was 22.5 wins, up from 17 in year one. So I really like what you did. But, again, kind of as you've alluded to, the team, it can't be what you really want it to be yet because it just can't. There wasn't a way to do it.
I'll try to compete as much as I can, but obviously, look,
of course,
but the success or failure of this roster is going to depend on these pitchers, and how much they can give me, right? And so obviously, Sixto Sanchez has already had a setback, and which Chris Paddock is going to show up and.
And Sixto might be one of those tough decisions that we were talking about earlier. What if he comes back looking healthy? What if he comes back looking really good? Like we've seen, the strikeouts have kind of never been there for him, but he's still very young and he throws very hard and he's shown the talent. So if he comes up and gives you, boy, I can't imagine them letting him throw a lot of innings just because of the shoulder. But if he comes up and looks brilliant in 40 innings. 45 innings, whatever it is. It's not going to be a huge blow to you to keep him for $17, So it's not like a horrible decision. It's not the Mackenzie Gore $29-31 decision, but Sixto could end up being one of those, do I deal him? Now he came out and had a great start. Do I hurry up and deal him?
Oh yeah. No, like there's a lot of trade bait on this roster.
Because you'll get bites. I mean, you'll get bites. In this league, you just dangle them out there. You'll get bites. Because pitching, especially anybody that looks like they can come up and give you innings. There were guys starting. Mike Foltynewicz was getting a regular turn in an ABL rotation last year. And he's pretty bad these days. So. Innings are innings. You don't want the negative points because that hitters aren't going to get you negative. That was the thing with Joey Gallo. Like the strikeouts are not going to ever get me a negative. Right. But pitchers, I had, there were times that I was hoping for Brad Keller to just give me 7 or 8 points, Brad Keller. And he comes in and he turns in a -3, 4, 5. Right. And it's devastating, which, if you're hoping for 7, that feels more like a -12 than a -5. Like I was really leaning on that start. That was one of my starts. I needed positive points. So that pitching, again, just to keep hammering the dead horse, it's so big in this league, but you don't have to necessarily have the Tony rotation. You don't have to have Bieber and DeGrom and Garrett Cole. The Dodgers proved that. A lot of teams proved that last year. The Pirates, these best teams, these were guys, like you said, that were kind of valuing their way to having really good rotations. That's not to say these guys didn't have good arms. Freddie Peralta, Robbie Ray on the Dodgers, those were really nice surprises for Joe, of course. Now, there's always going to be one or two every baseball season, these guys that return value that nobody was expecting. Now, there are a couple names like right on your team that I see that could do that. Bailey Ober, of course, sticks out as one of them, one of these guys that could really return value far and away of what you expect, especially if he averages anywhere near the 14 points that Trax has him for. So the
Yeah.
AL is not a power. I mean, it's a good division.
Yep.
But it's not dominated by two kind of top teams. Like the NL Central has the Pirates and the Cardinals, and
Yep.
it's pretty open.
I think that's right.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, like we've already said, you're not the team's not exactly where you want it to be yet, but you seem pretty happy with the direction you're going generally.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with where the draft went. I mean, like, you know, the strategy kind of worked itself out. I got all my main targets with the exception of Hayes, and I was pleasantly surprised to get some of the pitchers that fell to me at the prices I got them, given their upside, with the acknowledgement that they have a lot of warts. And so, could I compete in this division? Yeah, possibly, particularly if Cody Bellinger comes back. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that could be really, really dangerous. Right. And so, and I can pivot at some time and trade trade Turners of the world, or trade, Mountcastle, and particularly as some of these other guys start coming up from my minors. I mean, that's the thing to me that was like kind of like the silver lining with the roster that I built during the end of last year and over the beginning half of the off season, was just having so many minor leaguers that are so close to the majors.
Yeah,
right.
Your prospect depth is pretty good, and they're all on very, very good. You don't have any of those high priced.
No,
George
$5 I think is the highest one I have. Right.
It ended up being incredible. Valera for $4 is so attractive.
Yeah, so I mean, those guys, if they come up, obviously the caveat, they have to hit, right, or pitch, as the case may be. But
sure.
I see a lot of replacement value in the ability to kind of trade players midseason. But yeah, I think the AL East is pretty wide open. And if you look at the teams, there's a real emphasis on offense on most of the squads. And the Red Sox have a nice roster. I thought they have a very strong lineup. They've got Trout on that team, obviously. His health is a big issue, but obviously a generational player and talent. And I thought that the Blue Jays have a strong squad. And the Yankees and the Rays are going to be formidable too. But I thought out of all the teams, the Red Sox lineup is pretty imposing, I thought, again, with the caveat that Trout has to stay on the field.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I think you're seeing a lot of the lack of pitching depth in this division. Right. And so to me, it's going to be interesting to see how the teams stack up against each other. And, I could see a lot of, negative point scoring in the pitching category down in the weekly matchups, right?
Yeah, if those 20 points that Trout gets are offset by a negative from Jordan Lyles, further in the week, even though he was kind of surprisingly decent last year. Dallas Keuchel, another guy, kind of in that Brad Keller vein, where I was like, "Come on, man, just get me 5 points," and he'd go out and throw a 0 or a -2 or whatever it is. Yeah, I think the AL East. In the over-unders I did with Tony, man, I wish I could remember. I think I put the highest, I want to say it was like 32 or maybe 33.5, and I think that was the Rays.
Mm-hmm.
And as I like to take my own team as an example of what mine and Cleveland Mark from last year, what injuries can do in a 30-team league when you don't have the depth to replace these guys that end up going down. It is devastating to your lineup, because there are times in there when you're throwing a guy in that either A, he's knowingly not in the lineup that day, or B, he's a damn minor leaguer and he's not. You're just throwing it in there to have a legal lineup and not take not take the penalty or whatever. Like there were plenty of guys just knowingly taking zeros every single day because of injuries. That can kill a team. Not saying it's going to happen to the Rays or the Red Sox, but like you said, the health of Trout.
They've got Byron Buxton, right? Who poster child for this risk, right? I mean, the guy barely plays 100 games a year, right? World of talent. I
do wonder where they kind of get their, like where Trax gets there, because they're projecting Buxton for 120, and that feels optimistic, just for what we've seen in his career. Yeah, that feels optimistic to me. But at the same time, they're expecting 126 out of Victor Robles, who I think has really never really had injury issue. So like 119 out of Mondesi, are
Yeah,
I'll bet the house on the under 119 games for Alberto Mondesi. Where are they coming up with this stuff? So
yeah, no,
like
it is
it
interesting.
does look like a good lineup, but there is some risk there. The
Yeah,
Alonzo Albies combo and Ian Happ for
very nice,
$19, I
very
really
nice.
like on the Rays. Yeah,
Yeah,
but pitching depth, man. You look at the Rays; it's pitching depth. After Woodruff, after Erod, it gets really thin really fast.
yeah, and then this is, but again, you can look at every roster. I think in this division is
Yeah,
the same.
yeah. That's not to pick on the Rays or anything. Yeah, you're
Yeah, so it's
right.
like, look, I like Whitlock. I think he's an interesting, relief pitcher.
Sure.
And could have a lot of value this year. They've got Sandoval on their bench. Let's not lose sight of him if he's healthy. That's a third pitcher who's got some upside.
I kind
Um,
of like Spencer Howard. I wanted to go after him, but him being $12, and I'm already higher than I want to be. But man,
see
Spencer
Mitch
Howard
Keller.
was yeah, right, yeah. Spencer Howard was again like Mitch Keller. He was really good in the minors. Spencer Howard was great in the minors,
Sure.
and has not been great in the bigs. But I think he's a good like post hype kind of guy, like you were saying. So the Brady Singer, the Sixto, the Paddocks.
Yeah,
Um, I think he can be one of those guys. I'm a Spencer Howard
he could
believer.
be. He could
Um,
be. Look,
yeah,
I think he's,
but
the
he
metrics.
could also be junk. He could also
Yeah,
be
the
it.
metrics on his fastball, I think, are a little concerning recently. Like he just hasn't been able to use it as an out pitch, and there was an out pitch for him in the minors. So he's got to
Right, he was
maybe
blowing guys away in the minors, and big leaguers will hit 110
yeah,
if they,
yeah,
once they
and some
get
of that
used
may
to
be
it.
the shoulder problems that he's had. So he's been hurt, and so you don't really know what you got with him. But he definitely has a lot of
Sure.
upside, and may just also be a matter of getting healthy and fixing the grip or some modest
Yeah.
change in what he's doing, and it could make a world of difference for him. But yeah, they've got two big arms, and then like everybody else, you got questions, right?
Oh yeah, man. Wait, if Buxton and Mondesi are both out at the same time,
Right.
which yeah, flip a coin on will they or won't they? I mean, the odds are that they probably will miss some time together. These are two of like the made of glassingest guys in baseball. So yeah,
Yeah.
then the lineup doesn't really look as strong. And if they miss extended time, like I was saying, man, that AL East is
Well, it's wide open.
it's kind of the Wild West. It's the East, but you guys are all very close together. I think, especially lineup wise,
Yeah,
where
like I said,
health
there's a
and
lot of
depth is
offense.
really
There's a
gonna.
lot of offense in
Yeah,
that
it
division.
is a lot of offense, kind of
And
like
I
the
think
real
this
AL East.
yeah, this lineup, the Rays, just brings up another point for me, which is about risk management, in your roster construction. And this is obviously a risk heavy approach, which is fine, but that the downside is obviously significant if these guys do go out, as you were saying. And so, one of the things that I try to do is de-risk my roster. And
Sure.
if you look at the guys I drafted, like most of them, put the pitching aside, which is high risk. On the offensive side, the biggest risk I took was Cody Bellinger.
Former
And
MVP. Yeah.
right, and so that, but with
Still
his
26.
injuries and his last 2 years, it's a risky, but it was only $31 for him, right? And to me, the risk reward was worth it. But the other guys I took were mostly kind of like unhurt, steady. They play a lot of games. Trey Turner, Mountcastle. I mean, Mountcastle may be the boringest guy out there, but he shows up.
There's some worry with him about the fences being moved back, but I think he's a hitter. Maybe he loses a few home runs, but he's a hitter. Like if they turn into doubles, there's still points.
Yeah, I think I'm not so concerned about that, but
Yeah.
and I've also seen some spray charts on him, which suggests that his actual power will not be affected by the fences, but we'll see if that plays out or not. But
Right.
I don't personally worry too much about ballpark, with a handful of exceptions. Colorado obviously being a huge plus,
Sure.
right, and a couple other
Yeah.
stadiums like that, but Kauffman Stadium for lefties is pretty brutal, for example. But I don't focus too much on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you look at all the roster, any roster in the AL East, you're going to see a really good offensive team for the most part, and then a lot of questions on the staff. I think the Rays have the best staff probably, But yeah,
Well, Woodruff alone might tilt it for him. Just,
yeah. I
just
mean,
him,
the guy's a monster.
because he's like the guy with the big name. I don't think any of you other man. Let me.
No, I mean the
There's
Red
no other
Sox.
like ace right in the
Yeah, the
AL
Red Sox
East. I
don't
don't
have
think.
one, which is fine, and they've got like a bunch of, you know, well maybe
The
guys.
Jays have Lance Lynn. If you
Yep.
want to call Lance Lynn an ace, I guess he probably would be, especially in the ABL. But of course you'd way rather have Woodruff.
Yeah.
Um, what I notice when I look at the Orioles compared to these other guys is two contracts specifically, and we know how much we like Hunter Renfroe. We
Oh
also
boy.
know how much the other guys in the league don't like Hunter Renfroe. But $6 Hunter Renfroe and $3 Tyler O'Neill is going to be, has the potential to be some of the best $9 of production hitting wise, maybe in the entire league.
Yeah.
If
Look, I
they
mean,
both do what we know they're capable of doing.
right. Well, we're
That's,
not asking. I'm not asking too much of Hunter Renfro. He only has to be himself for
yeah,
$6,
yeah.
right?
Just be what you've
Which is
been. Yeah,
fine. And I think again, format matters with him. And
sure.
this is not a batting average league, right? It's a points league, and it's a daily league. So when he faces a tough right-hander, I can sit him. And and I will do that. Like I'll put him on the bench, right? And that's the other advantage of having guys like Blade coming up this year probably, and other right fielders who I can plug into that spot,
Yeah.
on a daily basis. And I'll figure that out. But yeah, look, I love the value of those contracts. It's the reason I acquired Renfro. I acquired Tyler O'Neill via trade. At a
And how
dollar.
good does that look now? How good does that look now? After he just continued to be, even as a Cardinal fan,
Yeah.
I thought that he's going to come back down to earth eventually. But man, he just
Oh,
he
he'll have
he
regression.
really looks like he's
Regression's like
progressing.
gravity.
Yeah,
It's hard, right?
it's
But
always going to be there.
yeah, regression
He
wins
looks
all the
good,
time.
man. He looks good though. I mean,
Yeah.
if he comes close to the 3.5, 3.64, whatever Trax is predicting for him for $3, you're looking at like that Freddie Peralta kind of production on the same kind of contract just for a bat.
Yeah, no, and look, I love the contract, and I'm very happy to have him at that price. So I didn't have to go out and spend $20 on him or something, right?
Yeah.
Which then you start losing that value because there is risk with him, right? There is a regression
Sure.
risk. But
Yeah.
for $3, I mean, I obviously signed him to a 5-year contract too at that price, which I'm like, I can live with him at $10. It's fine,
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, I like Renfro obviously more than some people do in the league, which is fine. And I've been living off Hunter Renfro for many years, so I'm totally happy to have his production at $6 and then $8 next year. I actually signed him for 3 years, so I got him for $10 in his last year of that contract, which I'll take all of that.
I think that's fine, especially in AB. I mean, maybe in the Discord the other day, maybe we were mixing like how people feel about him generally, like related to how you would feel about him in a league like the ABL, because that's kind of what I brought up, was specifically looking at the ABL, like, holy crap, look at the production you get for $6 out of Hunter Renfroe. I feel like he's not getting talked about enough. And
yeah, no, I think he's
obviously we had the guys that don't like him, make their opinions
as
known.
a real life ball player, he's very limited, right? I mean,
Yeah,
no
of course,
question
sure.
about that. I mean, he's not a great defender at all, and he can't hit right-handed pitching consistently, and so yeah, he's very limited. But in a fantasy league where you're just dealing with counting stats and points
with daily lineups, especially like man, who's the guy on the Giants? Was it the Giants? He kills lefties. Was it Wilmer Flores?
Yeah.
Wilmer Flores kill lefties. Yeah, he's like a Wilmer Flores. Yeah, when those guys are in the line, they're like DFS players. Like when Hunter Renfroe is facing a lefty, that you get him in the lineup. Because he's going to be cheap and he's got a chance to hit 2 homers or whatever. Like in a daily league, and with the positions, the way that we use them, we don't have just outfielders. We have the positions specific and stuff. So yeah, I mean depth matters, and being able to play it daily matters a lot. And I think for $6, we've said it already. We're both Hunter Renfroe fans. Yeah, I like him. I don't think he got enough credit for as good as he was last year, especially in a league like this.
Wait till I trade him.
I think. Yeah. This is all this was. If Joe was around, he would say Duke's just running the long game like he was hyping up Garrett Cole. And you know what made me look stupid? Because on the prediction, me, Tony, and Sam all said, Garrett Cole's going back to the Pirates. Duke's been talking about. Man, he does. He likes to run the psychological game a little bit. So maybe he is a Hunter Renfroe fan.
Well, we're going to make him a fan this year. So when Jesus Sanchez goes into like a terrible slump, like that's what I'll strike. And offer Duke, be a
when the time is right. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh
that's
man,
right.
Good stuff. Yeah, you know what? Not for nothing. I actually also you're a batted ball data kind of guy. Are you on? You picked up Brent Rooker for $1 in the auction. Have you seen some of hit like if Brent Rooker were to get everyday time, some of his batted ball metrics are really really good. Like not elite, but upper tier good. If he were to get regular at bat, like he's got some holes. But Brent Rooker is no slouch. And with the Twins, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, look, I mean, for $1 in this league, I'll roster him, and it's the Twins, so they have Byron Buxton on their team, who doesn't play, so he plays the outfield. Is there a chance he could get 120 games or 130? Yeah.
I suppose there's a non-zero chance. Yeah.
Yeah. And, they've got other players in the outfield there who have had injury problems. Kepler's, had problems in the past. And, there's a chance he could be a real contributor. There's also a chance I could cut him. He's
right. I mean, I'm not saying like, Brent Rooker's gonna win you the East, but he was on my list of guys that I was maybe hoping to sneak through to Fab. And he was on my Fab list. If nobody grabs him for $1 in the auction, because I had spent my money pretty early, Brent Rooker was high on my list of guys that I wanted to try to sneak $1 a Fab because
he was one of my last $1 bid guys, right?
There's some power in that bat, and if he gets a chance, I think he could be really good. Now, of course, like you said, you also end up cutting him, but I like Brent Rooker. I think there's some potential in Brent Rooker there. Yeah, you've got some contracts on this team that look, especially like you said earlier, when the prospects come up. I traded Helio Ramos to you. I liked Helio Ramos. Ivan Herrera, of course, is the supposed catcher of the future Cardinals. Yeah, the heir apparent. I like the way you're going. And another guy, another Brent Rooker type, and he's the pitcher. Mitch White was going to be my pitcher that I hoped snuck through to Fab, especially because he's got that spark thing, and you don't know necessarily what the Dodgers are going to do with him. Maybe they're going to throw him as a long reliever, maybe, who knows? But he was definitely a guy on my list as well that I was really hoping would get off everybody's radar and sneak through to Fab. And in a 30-team league with sharp owners, it just doesn't happen.
No, and look, I mean, obviously somebody bid $2 on him or whatever, right? I mean, so I actually may have had a max bid of $3. Somebody maybe bid $3 on him too, right? I just don't remember how it played out.
You had it first, yeah.
Yeah, but with my pitching staff, like, could I see putting Mitch White permanently in the SP position and just leaving him there and not starting a Matt Keller when he's doing crappy? I mean, just avoid taking 0, right? Avoid the negatives, I should say. And some of these guys are just like specs on the pitching, particularly the relief pitchers. Like they're just, I'll see what happens, but I expect that we're going to have some of these minor leaguers come up pretty quickly. Particularly Hunter Brown, but this Mason
also
Miller
a spark actually right now on tracks. Also a spark.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then this Mason Miller guy who I picked up off of waivers is kind of an interesting story because he's old. I mean, he got drafted last year and he's 23.
Is he the guy that gained some weight and added a bunch to his fastball or something like that?
Yeah, I believe that's his story. And like, he was lying around there. He's a guy I've been following, and in this format, I mean, there's a chance he could be up at the end of the year.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know how good he's going to be. I have no idea.
Story. Like, what, man? There was some reason he gained that weight. Like, what? He's like, was he like diabetic or something like he had some kind of condition, and he gained like 40 pounds. Like he gained a bunch of weight, but not like bad weight. He put on muscle and stuff, and his fastball jumped. Not like remember
Oh,
Josh James a couple years ago?
yeah,
He got a CPAP machine, and then
yeah.
all of a sudden his fastball game like 10, 11 miles an hour. He was throwing 100 plus. It's kind
Yep.
of like that. Not quite that dramatic, but yeah, this kid
It could be.
was
It could
kind of
also be
like that.
steroids. So let's
Yeah.
let's see what it is, right? I mean, I don't
That's
know.
going to save baseball. We had another near strike, and now steroids are going to come back and save baseball again.
Right. That's right. That's right. We're right back in the McGuire years again.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. Everything history is cyclical, right? Yeah, it all repeats itself.
Absolutely.
Man, I've kept you here for an hour in the middle of a work day. Did you want to talk about anything? Do you want to talk about some other leagues that you're in?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, look, I can give you like a little bit of background. I mean, none
Yeah,
of the,
yeah.
it's the old adage that nobody gives
Yeah.
a shit about your other fantasy leagues, right?
Yeah, no,
But,
let's
like,
just a little bit of your fantasy history, fantasy resume, a little bit.
yeah, so I've been playing fantasy since about 1987, fantasy baseball, and so and I started doing it when you got your scores and your stats out of USA Today.
Yes.
The internet did not really exist, right?
Yeah.
There weren't websites, and you had to like actually keep track of everything. And the commissioner's job was, among other things, keeping track of the standings.
Yeah.
So it was much worse for people like Duke back in the day.
And the commissioner, of course, is having to shell out that at that time, what was it, 25 cents a week
Right.
to get the sports
Right.
or baseball weekly?
Yeah. Right. I mean, that was how you got baseball.
Yeah, sure.
USA Today, right? They had the
Yeah.
latest go to press, right? So you'd always get the
Yeah.
West Coast games in there with a couple of exceptions. So, and over the years, I've gotten into, more competitive leagues, and, I have two keeper leagues that I'm in, both of which are, $300 or plus entries. So they're big stakes leagues. One of those leagues, actually last year I won both those leagues. They're both like 12-team keeper leagues. So that was sweet. I mean, the payouts are very high on those leagues, and, both auction leagues, both keeper leagues, slightly different scoring, but it was good prep for the ABL draft that I have the long experience with those leagues doing auctions.
Did you like the slow auction? Do you like that format, or are you a live auction?
I'm a live auction guy.
I like live auctions.
I hate slow drafts. I just, and if you look at the pick time for like whenever I'm doing something in a snake draft, it's like usually under 5 seconds. Like I'm ready, and I'm a lunatic. I follow live what everybody else is doing. I have it on all the time. My wife makes fun of me. I mean, my wife basically, has resigned herself to being a baseball widow as soon as like spring training rolls around.
When the season rolls around,
she knows. So it usually is marked actually by December when I receive Baseball HQ's forecaster. So when that comes in the mail, she says, "All right, fine." You realize that I'm losing like 40% of your bandwidth right now. And so I hate slow drafts. I can't stand them. Slow auctions, I can't stand. Look, the dynamic that we have in this league using Couch Manager is more fun because at least then you have multiple bidding options at the same time.
Right.
And there's a strategy involved with that that's harder to anticipate. Like one of the things that happened to me in the auction here at third base, there were a whole bunch of third basemen on the board, and you were bidding for Biggio, I think, at the same time.
Yeah. Yep.
And so they were all on the board simultaneously. And I had the high bid on Hayes, and then I got flipped by Gary, the Yankees Gary, on him. And he was actually bidding up all the third basemen at the same time. And so
that's a strategy.
I had to default to Bohm, who got bid up from, I think I got in on him at $16 or something. And I had to make a decision because of the timer, like what I was going to do. And I didn't want to get stuck with 2 third basemen because I have other positions to fill at the time.
Right. You want to spend $40 on 2 third basemen. Yeah.
Right. So I would have gotten in on Biggio, for example, because I think you got it for what, $16 or something like that?
I got it for 20. He ended up going for 20.
Oh, 20. Okay. So maybe when I first got in,
I was in that same position where they were all out there, and I had a giant hole. I had literally nobody that could play third base at the time. Like, not even a competent, bench guy that I could slip in there. So it was the same thing. Like when I got flipped on one, it's like, okay, well, do I go with Biggio or do I keep trying to go with Bohm? Because I try to do Bohm and I'd get yellowed on him. I wouldn't be able to flip him. So I'm like, well, what? And then I flipped Biggio, And then I said, well, man, look at all this action at third base. I bumped it up 220. That was my high. And he went up to 20. So I think maybe Sam said he almost went one more dollar. And if he would have, I would have been flipped on Biggio. I think Bohm was either near gone or already gone.
Well, I was ahead of your timing wise. Yeah, because
it was trouble. It was going to be trouble.
I think Moustakas was still on the board at that point because he was also in that mix. So that was the strategy. Like, who do you pick? And then you have to kind of stick with your horse, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to end up with two of them. And particularly, I had more roster spots to fill than you did at that point, right? So for me,
and more money, of course, too. But still, it's not like you were looking to lay $35, $40 into two third basemen. Especially if it was guys that could only play third base. Like you've got a utility spot or whatever. But
and I already had Mountcastle filling the utility spot, right? So it was like it would have been a real problem. And so I had to back into the bone. But I like that strategy. That was the point of all this, right? I like the multiple bidding. It kind of adds an element of depth, which makes for me the long draft, more palatable.
Sure.
I'm also in a league with Jeff, Dynasty League, which Jeff is the commissioner of, and so Tony's in that league too. And actually, Gary's now in the league, Gary the Blue Jays. So we've got like some ABL.
We're all just mixing together,
yeah. So that's been fun, and we're gearing up for our draft this weekend. Actually, it starts. So that'll be interesting.
Is that the league that Brendan is also in? You're in a league with Royals Brendan too.
That's a different league.
That's a different one.
I brought him into a league, a 20-team league that I started last year on Fantrax, and there are a bunch of like industry guys in that league. That's the one Chris Clegg was in. He's since left the league, but Brandon's in there. He inherited an interesting roster with a lot of draft picks, and so he's getting acclimated to that. But that's like a hold forever dynasty league it's with this draft as opposed to
no contract,
snake draft. Yeah. So those are fun. So I have total of 6 leagues basically right now, and that's plenty to keep me busy. I'm always turning down new leagues, but I did do another startup dynasty league this year, which is a 20-teamer, and that's the one that I've got that's the one that has the $61 for Pete Alonso that I was quoting in the Discord chat.
Oh yeah, exaggerating Pete Alonso's price. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't $50; it was $61.
Right. Yeah, it's actually worse.
Shit. Yeah, but anyway, so I love fantasy. Like I do it all the time, and I'm obsessed. So the only way I make it up to my wife is to use all the winnings that I have in any given year, and I buy her a gift. I use 100% of the winnings to buy her something. So she's always happy.
That's the balance. You got to keep the balance, or else you're not going to be in more than 6 leagues or 5 leagues or whatever it is next year.
So she tolerates it all, but by around August, right? She's actually interested in how I'm doing.
How much are we winning this year? Yeah.
Is this going to be a Tiffany's necklace this year? Or is it going to be?
Are you going to be happy at the end of the season, or are you going to be a little upset? Are we going out to a nice dinner?
Yeah. So she's definitely vested in that way. But it's all like part of the plan, right? To keep her engaged.
Yeah. So, all about life is about balance. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, man. Well, that was a nice hour. I like the discussion we had, man. I'm glad you're in the league. I was really happy, kind of before we had talked a lot on Discord or anything. I was happy that you were coming in and making moves and stuff. And then I found out you were a Cardinal fan, and then you're showing pictures of your baseball memorabilia. I'm like, okay, so if it's not enough that this guy's coming into a 30-team dynasty like the ABL, this guy's a baseball guy. This guy's a baseball guy. This guy's a Cardinal fan. I'm going to like this guy. Not that I really dislike anybody in the ABL, but you know what I mean. Yeah. I'm glad that you're here, man. I think you're probably going to stick around.
I'm glad you're doing this. This is fun, and I think it's great for the league.
Yeah, I like these. I'm glad I was able to finally get you on here. I didn't want to throw you on right after you took over a team and sit here and say, so man, what do you want to do with this team? Like what moves are you going to make? Tell us what you're going to do. Yeah. So we can all end around each other and try to screw somebody for a guy in your roster. I didn't want to do that. And I didn't want to do it before the auction and say, hey, who are your targets? Who are you looking at? Yeah, who are you going to spend all that money on? So I'm glad we were able to do this now. I did, of course, to do another I would like to do a more in depth on the AL East. We covered it pretty good, but yeah, I don't want this to be a one time thing. I guess is what
Oh,
I'm
I'm
saying.
happy to be back.
Yeah,
I like doing these, and it's fun. It's always good to talk baseball, right? And
yeah, man. Yeah. I'm happy to have it back. Like I said, I was doing this because I'm stressing out because my wife's on an 8 hour drive, and I'm just a naturally anxious person. Like I just worry about bad shit happening. So I wanted a distraction. So this was a nice
good.
distraction. And this was, yeah, we got to know Steven of the Orioles. This is your new Orioles owner. We never got to know Randy before he bounced on us, but I think I like the replacement pretty good.
I'm not going anywhere. So
even if you're a bit of a ringer with these other leagues that you play in and win, but
that's all right. That's all right.
man,
I got to prove it here.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I got to prove it. This is a different beast. Thanks for your time, Steve, and enjoy the rest of your day, man.
You too. All right. Take it easy.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.